I'm with Truott, and True is a history researcher, a truth seeker, looking for the same truths of what went on in our history, same as me. And I found out that he knows a lot of interesting things. And in fact, True, I didn't know this. You got your own radio show and all that stuff, your own radio program.
Yes, I've been.
And naturopathic or healing herbs and things like that. So I want to know, tell me about your radio show, tell me about that, and then I want to delve into, you found this giant skull when you was a kid, and what that truth hit it.
That's what started this whole thing off. I'm 16, maybe 15 years old. I was in between my sophomore and junior year. I grew up in Hawthorne, Nevada, and my father, my roots are from southern Utah. My Uncle Bob, had a 300 cow calf permit that I would come out and I loved to play John Wayne, play cowboy. He had a horse for me, and we'd go move the cattle and do all of this. And his BLM grazing permit was in an area of southern Utah called Johnson Canyon, just kind of north, a little bit north and east of Kanab. And so we went there in the spring and just kind of watching after the new cow and calf operation and checking them. And of course, after we call them gully washers, the big thunderstorms that would roll through there, a lot of times they would just have washouts. And so we had to come and make sure the cows could get out of the washouts, that type of thing. Sometimes they would go down where it's moist and get some grass and get caught up in those washes, as the southern Utahns would say. So he had me, following up on tracing this new flash flood wash, and I was winding through. It was the red soil, and it started out about 4 foot deep, and then it got deeper and deeper as it cut towards the main flow of the Paria River down there. And as I was going around, there was a place where this red sandstone ledge had come around, and sticking out from the fresh cut whoosh looked like I thought it was another big boulder, a big round looking. Looked like a right big rock to me, but except it was not the same color. It wasn't red like the other rock. So I looked closer at it, and I looked and what is that? It's kind of a round rock. Why is that there? And I dug around it with got a stick and another stone and was moving around. And I found it was a big skull heading out. And as I dug around it even more, I found, well, this is amazing, because there was more than just from the skull. I saw the shoulder bones and what have you. So it was laying. Its head was sticking in the wash, and so I came and dug around it a little bit, and then I came and told my uncle and cousins, and showed them. And the next thing they know, they notified the BLM, and the BLM. Then notified BYU, or I think it was BYU, I'm not exactly sure, I know they're affiliated with BYU, to come and do a dig on it. And I thought it would be front page news. But over the rest of the summer, they came in and they had a backhoe come down off the side, cleaned it out that way, and then within about 10 days it was fully excavated. And I think they wouldn't let us get close to it. But I could, even though I thought it would be news, yeah. And it was a full skeleton of clearly a giant individual.
So how you probably could tell us already, I'm interrupting you. How big was the skull? How tall was this?
About like a 55-gallon jugs, about that. It was huge, very, very large.
Head,
about 10 times larger.
10 times larger?
Yeah. If again, I'm estimating now, so I didn't see the whole thing as it came out, but it was about 36 inches. So just in the top part of it as it came down, it was good size. I thought it was a big boulder sticking out.
Yeah. That double rows of teeth, did you tell that or not?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Well, I didn't see the double rows of teeth or the other digits, but talking to one of the people that was there, they did say that there was double rows of teeth and six digits, 5 fingers and a thumb, and the same on that. They wouldn't even go on the record on this. They were saying, well, you should know that this is going to be taken care of. I was assuming by taken care of that it would be there'd be a press release on it and it would be in the newspapers. To me, it was a big thing.
Yeah.
My uncle was thinking it was a big thing too. Now, in the same area, this is the Paria River area, there's an old ghost town, old Paria down in that neck of the woods.
So this is southern Utah.
Southern Utah, yes. It's in between, on the road to Kanab to Lake Powell to Page, that route through there, okay? So about halfway through, there's an old movie set, ghost town. They filmed Outlaw Josie Wells there, okay? That whole part where they go to Texas and get their ranch, that's where it was filmed. So, and I was going to college at the Southern Utah University. We would go there and make our own little movies, because it was right the same set where the outlaw Josie Wells, comes in and he has a shootout with the bounty hunter, at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That type of thing. That's where it all happened. It's kind of a cool set. So we were in there in the old Paria ghost town when that's kind of out from there is where they had the epicenter of the excavation dig, and it just spirited it away. The femur, the long bone, was I think they said something like 7 feet tall itself, just the femur.
You're kidding?
That's huge.
Holy cow!
I mean,
you're talking.
Yeah.
You're
big.
I'm talking an 8-foot giant. You're talking a
14, 15 foot. Yeah, the femur is 6 to 7 feet tall.
Wow.
Again, do I have proof of it? No, this is anecdotal. I was there, I saw it. I thought I would be named after me, the Ott Giant or something like that, but nothing came of it. It was all spirited away. In that area of Old Paria, there are a number of other things that's kind of stand out historically. There was before the United States got into World War II, I think 1938-39, there was reports, and my family was very much involved with this. There was a couple of German spies that had set up a ham radio section in that part of the country.
Really?
And it's wilderness area. I mean, you go out there, it's like outlaw Josie Wells country. It's backwoods. And this is in the Garfield County and Kane County history. Okay, the anomaly of the German spies. What were the Germans doing in there? And who are they communicating with? This is the southern part of the wilderness. What were they doing in there? See?
Wow.
I think they were looking for artifacts. I think they had received some secret knowledge from the...
100%. They was looking for that stuff, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what they were after. I really do think they had some ancient history.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was... in fact, my uncle, and when they were out riding the horses, he would show me the remnants of their camp. There was even old boxes with swastikas on it, still back. And this is 1970s.
Really?
They were rusted and old, but it was definitely a Nazi encampment. What were they doing there in Johnson Canyon area?
So you remember that where that was at, and that was in Johnson Canyon?
Yeah, it was right in that same area where the Giant was.
Wow.
Steve Quayle has done a lot of work on this. Steve Quayle does another radio show host. He has written books on the Empire Under the Ice, the story of the Giants, the fallen ones, the sons of God. This is what it all ties into, okay? And if you want to take a picture, there's the McConkey Ranch that you've seen the Bigfoot panel, where here's this huge giant in all this regalia, like a crown and things, and and the other figures are coming up to his knee. You know, this giant. To me, that's what we're talking about here. The ancient ones were giants.
So I detoured just, and I want to get you back to Johnson's Canyon and the Germans, that's another thing I want to talk about, if you're willing to talk about it. If you're not, then
absolutely.
You know,
we need to
back to Johnson Canyon the Germans.
So yeah, there's all kinds of anomalies in that neck of the woods that don't fit anywhere. Okay. One of the other things that I do know firsthand, because I was involved in that about in the early 80s. On the top of the red sandstone plateau, in the Johnson Canyon area, a lot of it was staging areas for John Wayne westerns. Okay, Kanab and the area from Kanab
they filmed
to the east.
There.
Yeah, did a lot of westerns there. So a lot of this was centered. Again, the Outlaw Josie Wells was a really good show that was filmed mostly that area. Okay, and others. McKenna's Gold. I know exactly where that was filmed, and all these 60s westerns, a lot of them were filmed in this area. And I say that because you follow there's an old ancient trail carved in the sandstone to the top of the plateau, and I was kicking around on that a lot as a young adult. I took my horse and rode through all of that. It's remote, rugged country, no doubt about it. But up on the top of this red sandstone plateau, this has all been dynamited off now. You can't see it. It's been destroyed.
Really?
Okay? And I didn't find this, but my cousin found it up there. There were these, you don't see basalt, lava type of rocks mixed with red sandstone. It doesn't fit geologically. But here on this flat plateau, about 2,000 feet above the floor of the valley, were all these basalt rocks, and the geologists say, well, these were blown out of a volcano and they just landed here, and they call them basalt missiles or basalt bombs or something. But what upon further, there was about a dozen of these spread out on this plateau, and they were quite large boulders. One of them had somehow eroded and cracked away, and my cousin and his friends took a lever and pushed it off and found it was actually like a cork in a bottle. It was corking a very large, like bore tunnel, and inside these were tombs. Tombs of the ancient ones. The technology to do that was what was stunning. First of all, to even have the sandstone cut in, it's about a 7-foot circle. Spiral circle going down about 8 foot. And inside were these remains, many of them mummified.
And that was your cousins that found them?
And again, the same group came in, this was BLM land, came in and actually took them away. But he saw the one that he was able to pry open and look at. They were definitely not American Indian. These were reddish blonde hair.
But they weren't giants?
They weren't giants, but they were big. They were 6 to 7 foot. They were well muscled, well boned. And there were two, at least in the one that he looked at, there was a man and a woman, like a king and a queen or some sort of thing. But there were also other artifacts in that with them buried, according to what he saw.
So like what? When you say king and a queen, how do you know a king and a queen?
Well, they had like
Bruce Cave?
They had like crowns on. Really? They were like royalty, according to what he said. And he did.
This is your cousin.
My cousin, yeah. He took pictures of it, and after he notified, again, it was like the giant skeleton, it was taken out. All this was actually destroyed and bulldozed and hidden, dynamited. It was destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, again, what proof do I have of that? Well, it's not in any history book for sure. But see, that goes back to why were the Nazis here? What were they looking for? Okay. Steve Quayle, in his book Empire Under the Ice, documents the top secret driving force of the Nazi Party was a group called the Anunnaki, and they were very much interdimensional, talking with beings, and it was the occult part of the Third Reich. Okay, and it was the Anunnaki, according to Steve Quayle's research, that was driving the search for the lost Ark of the Covenant. That is factual, actually. They made it into a movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but that was based on historical fact. They're also looking for Longinus, Spirit of Destiny, as well as the Holy Grail. That's what they're really searching for, according to the Anunnaki documentation. So that's what I think led him to come to southern Utah and was looking there for that. That's my conclusion drawn from that.
I'd never heard that they were even there, so
yeah.
I want to follow up on
that. That's an absolute thing. Yeah, I know if you dig deep in Kane County, Garfield County archives, it was because it made it made front page news in the newspapers. Not because this was before we declared war on Germany. They were just foreigners, but what were they doing there with ham radios?
Oh, this was before the war.
This was before the war, before we entered the war. This is as they were going into Poland and this type of thing. It was well before the U.S. entered the war. And the U.S. was pretty much had friendly relations with Germany up until Japan bombed them. You know, so it wasn't wrong to have that, but it was just kind of strange to have them in there. What were they doing there?
Yeah.
Okay. Which again ties into what I told you before about E.W. Haffenbrook and this Crown Prince of Germany coming in and taking the railroad in 1870s here to northern Utah and to the Uinta Mountains, looking for, some artifacts that he knew of. And what would drive him from Germany all the way here to the Uinta Mountains looking? Well, and what did he know is the big question. There's no doubt he had a specific grouping of maps and some documentation. Ancient in scope, yeah.
So, you delved into trying to track down this stuff, finding the truths and all that, so I imagine that probably stemmed from when you as a kid found that giant.
That is. I felt robbed. I felt like, why is this not in the news? Why is this is cool? This is like, fee fi fo fum. This huge giant is found, and it's not in the news. I was shocked by that. So that began and wanting to find more and more. Even the evidence of the Spanish being in Utah preceding, Escalante and Dominguez, the official government say there's no Spanish in southern Utah until 1776 and Escalante and Dominguez. Even though the Seville, Spanish archives show there were many expeditions here concurrent with Pizarro and Cortez in the 1500s and in the 1600s. All of those Spanish galleon treasure fleets, they didn't get it all from Montezuma. They got it from southern Utah. A lot of that came out of the record. Okay, so the whole old Spanish trail, you follow that. There's markings along the old Spanish trail carved in the rocks, dating 1528 with expedition symbols. So there was 16th and in the 17th century. Many of these treasure caravans, they came out and they went the old Spanish trail across the Colorado, and then they went down to the Gulf of Mexico and then shipped them to Spain. And this is well documented in the archives of Spain itself. And in fact, I was involved with the Spanish Mustang Association. There is, looking at the Spanish Mustangs of the West Desert in southern Utah, just west of Cedar City, they have some of the purest bloodline Spanish zebra striped stock down there. In fact, there was a fellow that I met up here in Mantua who headed up the Spanish Mustang Association, took blood samples from some of those rugged, they looked like zebra markings on the specific bloodlines, and they went back and analyzed it, and it was the pure stock of the Spanish stock. It dated back to they weren't given the best stock. They had records of the Spanish Andalusian versus the rugged little ponies. They never let the conquistadors coming into Utah. They never had the Andalusian big stock. They always had the rugged. They had burros and this Soraya stock, which was really had the old zebra stripe done, looking on it. And they document this was outfitted in the 16th and 17th centuries, well before Dominguez and Escalante came across the Crossing of the Fathers. Well before that.
Wow.
Way before that, okay? So the evidence is there in just the Spanish Mustang stock.
Yeah.
Okay? So I say that because in Cedar City, we see evidence from Cedar City going down and following the trail, the old trail over the mountain, so we go right into Johnson Canyon area, which is where there was a lot of Spanish. In fact, kicking around there, I did find a Spanish lance tip and an old Spanish spur.
Really?
That I took pictures of, documented, and of course, the Antiquities Act, you've got to be real careful about what you do and that, making it. The dating of that Spanish lance and the spur was, each lance had its own history. Based on when it was issued and that type of thing, and this dated back into the mid-1600s. Now, I documented this and gave it to the BLM archaeologist, and they wouldn't accept it. They just officially no, 1776. And I wrote freelance articles about this to the local newspaper and got a lot of controversy with the BLM, the official government version. So no, that's not what it was. But I know different. I mean, come on. Nobody's going to mark 1628 on sandstone rocks and where you found this area. It was all documented. I have the pictures of it, showing. So they were definitely here well before Escalante and Dominguez. Which, tying into the Giants again, you see, where does all of this come from? What were the Giants doing here? Who were they? These are the big question marks. And if there was one skeleton found in that dry wash, I estimated about 7 or 8 feet, below the surface. So it put it back quite a few hundreds of years back in that area. The Ute Indian legends and the Paiute legends talk about they had wars with these giants, and they basically eradicated them. It's all part of the antiquities. The legends of the local Indians knew that. But here's where it gets kind of interesting too, is the cave system. And I don't have my notes. It's just all in my memory now. But this is part of the congressional record. So Major Powell retired. He lost his arm right in the Civil War. He comes out in the late 1860s, early 1870s, and he's commissioned to go take his boats down from Green River, float and map the Colorado River. Okay. When you look at that, these little boats that are in the Powell Museum there on Page. Wow, it's. I don't know if I would have the guts to do that, because of the rapids, and people that knew the area, the local guides, were saying they never see him again, right? When they left Green River and floated down, they said you'll never survive, but they did. They came out, and in what is the area now known as Grand Canyon National Park, in the area, You notice that some of the escarpments and the names of the formations there are all Egyptian names.
Yes.
Okay, the Temple of Osiris and all this stuff, right? Well, what is in the record is they got in there and they looked up as the setting sun was coming on the one side. They could see what looked like a little keyhole up on the rock where it had been eroded for centuries down. It was quite high up. So they had to basically, put and scale up to the hole. And according to, this is in the congressional record, the notes of the Powell expedition, they went in and found it was full of Egyptian artifacts.
This is in that, because the only thing that I've heard about is in that newspaper article, the Phoenix Gazette, 19 something, that talks about all this, but this, and that the Smithsonian denies all this, but it is in it.
Yes, it's in the record. Now, yeah, that fellow that found it later he came out of, he was a World War I veteran, a Marine. His name was G.E. Kincaid.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Kincaid came with another partner. They were doing some, they had taken and doing prospecting down into the Grand Canyon, and he, I think this was 1921, 22, was well after the Great War had ended, and he found the same thing that Powell had found. He went in and actually came back and took artifacts out of solid gold, and he went back and made a claim and made a press statement that found this in his front page headlines, the way it should be. Fantastic discoveries found in the Grand Canyon, Egyptian and then suddenly after the newspapers ran with this, it was like shut down, stopped. And there was later a retraction, like a year or so later. This was in April, like April 6th or 7th when this came out. The paper said, well, this was an April Fool's joke. We really didn't, it wasn't really a true story, but it was. I have a source in Washington who has high security clearance, who has been into the Smithsonian and verified all of what came out of there. It's amazing. The world needs to know this, but they won't. They won't talk about it. It's officially non-existent. But on my blog, atrueodd.com, I had a whole series. I did articles about this. I wrote about it with pictures. And that was one of the most controversial things I blogged about, because half the people were, wow, wonderful story. Others says, well, this is all Photoshop nonsense, this time. It was never, either good or bad. They were just, but I had a lot of comments, a lot of hits on this.
So where did you get your photos from?
From my fellow in Washington who invited me to come back to the Smithsonian and go and see him himself and verify him.
So you've seen some of this stuff yourself?
I have not seen him, but I have the pictures, and I believe him completely. Yeah, because the story, as you dig into it, it fits. G.E. Kincaid was well paid to basically shut up. Okay, my source in D.C. explained that it was scientifically and politically problematic on a worldview. Because first of all, the Egyptian embassy claimed ownership because they were Egyptian in nature. But what part of location don't you understand? According to my guy, here's why it was controversial. 2 points. First of all, according to there were walls and walls of hieroglyphics carved in, giving the whole history of who they were and what they were doing and why they were there and where they came from. See, for the people say, well, what's the Egyptians doing at the bottom of the Grand Canyon with all this rapids? How'd they get there? Did they come by ship? Well, that didn't happen till Columbus, right? According to what was there on the wall, they came via a massive tunnel system. And this was the entrance going into the tunnels going back. It documented two things that correspond with the Hopi and Pueblo Indians. The Hopis talk about the ant people and the kivas that they have on their second and third mesa in Arizona. and they came out from these massive tunnel systems after the flood. They were put in there to basically, the whole earth was covered with flood water. Okay? That's the Hopi tradition. But the Hopis also have the tradition of part of those underground subterranean chambers. There were big giants that they were never to work with. So there's that giant thread in the cave system. And according to the Hopis that I know, they still exist there. They're just set off. Steve Quayle talks about the Kandahar giant that happened in Afghanistan, where the giant came and engaged and killed a couple of our special forces in Afghanistan. That's, again, shut down, and everything else is quiet about that. Because see, if it happens in Afghanistan and the tunnel system there, it validates what I'm talking about. Here, until the Rosetta Stone was found, they weren't able to interpret those hieroglyphics
in the Grand Canyon.
In the Grand Canyon. But now that the Rosetta Stone, we know how to read the hieroglyphics. It's an amazing story, according to my source in Washington, D.C.
So the powers to be have kind of interpreted them.
They know exactly what it is. Okay?
What's the story?
The story is, this is the descendants of the biblical Joseph of Egypt. Tells the whole story. Lays it out as to how many generations they actually had a civilization there and why they left. It's all their history is on the walls. And it's definitely history that's not in the history books, and they're not going to talk about it. First of all, it validates the Bible, and they're never going to do that. Okay? Then the next thing, it validates there's a whole antediluvian underground subterranean civilization involving giants. I'm not going to let that out either. Why? Because again, that goes back to Stephen Quayle's Empire Under the Ice and the connection to Antarctica and the Anunnaki, the secret society. It's really the deep state is keeping the lid on this. That's what it's about. And people have died over this information. This is earth-shattering and life-changing when you see that this is much different than what you believe that the world is. So here's all these tunnels that connect to actually the entrance, according to the interpretation. There's under the Sphinx in Egypt is where the tunnel connects, and it goes out throughout much of the world. In fact, it's interconnected tunnels throughout the world. South America, under the oceans, it goes under the oceans into the trenches. It's that, and it's connected by ancient technology, fast moving, they call them chariots, but they're carts that fast move, so they could travel fast. In fact, you can go again on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, the Kaibab Peninsula, the Kaibab Plateau. The giant ponderosa pines that are on, like around Jacobs Lake and that whole area of northern Arizona, there is ancient workings, vast irrigation networks of an ancient society that was very skilled in bringing water, and there was granaries and everything. There was massive grain production, and that's explained in the walls. They raised grain on that plateau and brought it back for the famine years, validating the biblical story once again. In fact, have you ever wondered, the sarcophagus of like King Tut, the royalty were carved in stone. These intricate sarcophagi were stone cut, but the common people, when they were mummified, they were put into wooden sarcophagi that was carved with wood. Where are they going to get this wood in Egypt? There's no forest to cut.
I never thought about that.
There was the cedars of Lebanon, but they weren't cedar trees. These sarcophagi were carved out of pine, and the pine is ponderosa pine from the north rim of the Grand Canyon. How did they get it? This explains it.
I never even knew or thought about that.
Yeah.
Did you?
Wow. Yeah, and so,
Interesting.
in fact, there were...
So,
Go ahead.
man, what did I say? So, we had a mutual friend who had a wooden sarcophagus.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Was any of that, was that tested that it was pine from?
Yes.
That was tested.
Yes, this is what I'm telling you. What do you think Gary and I, when I was laying this on Gary was like, just like you, I never thought of that.
Wow.
Where do they get these massive pines?
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Because, those ponderosa pines in Jacob, they're big. They're massive pines. And there was evidence that they were harvested and cut at that time frame. It all fits. The archaeological, but it's been systematically kept zipped up. Okay? Again, my friend in Washington said, well, people aren't going to believe it if you tell them. They're just going to, because the media is so convincing, and then you see on the news, it's got to be correct, right? Don't question any of this, but that's a huge part of the puzzle. That really is. The ancient technologies of what they did and why. Okay, yeah, very much so. As I see, my reality of it is again, imagine, what type of civilization was it? Was it Lemuria? Was it Atlantis? Where did the ancient ones get the ability to carve the statues of Easter Island, for all these megaliths, all these things that were so precise? How did they do it? They had technology that we can't replicate today. So, yeah, there's a lot of dots that need to be connected here with, and again, you look at the ancient mines, the ancient repositories in Utah, they're very real. Okay, very much so. So getting back, to the connections, it's not just the Egyptians that were here, but who conquered the Egyptians? Look at your history books. The Roman Empire filled the void in around the time of Jesus, starting in 100 BC to the present, 12. The Romans controlled the world, and the Romans actually had a value system based on the most valuable commodity, and important for the troops, the centurions, the foot soldiers. You have to have daily salt, and to make your muscles work correctly, the right kind of pure salt is essential. It's the most valuable commodity traded in the national international markets at that time was pure salt. In fact, if you look at scripture in the New Testament, Jesus calls his disciples, the elect, the savor. It says, but if the salt has lost its savor, it's worth nothing but put under the ground and under the foot of man, right? What does that mean? If the pure salt in the marketplace was adulterated, put a little tiny pinch of it on the side of your tongue. If it's the good stuff, you'll start to salivate. Makes your mouth, like Pavlov's dog. You'll start to get moist. If it's adulterated, it's lost its savor. It's not savory anymore. It's kind of toxic, so they'll throw it out and not be worth anything in the marketplace. But the salt of the earth, Jesus referred to at the time, it was well known in all the Roman market. This was the ultimate commodity, better than gold. It was more valuable than gold or silver because everybody had to have that salt on a daily basis. And the Romans at the time controlled the salt trade. The ancient Salzburg mines in Germany were run by the Romans. They had Roman salt coming out of that. They had knowledge. The Romans somehow, because of their conquering of other nations and tribes, knew where all the salt was. So they controlled it. And in fact, the Latin term salary means salt pay. It's really literally what it means. And you haven't earned your salt today, you haven't earned your salary, your salt pay. Now, why is that important? Well, a centurion got the highest amount of salt pay, and that salt pay that can be bartered for even gold or coin in the marketplace, or whatever commodity you need. It was the ultimate international currency.
Really?
Yeah, that's where it comes from. All right? So, were the Romans in Utah? Yeah.
So, and I was going to ask that because, you know, there has been some Roman coins found around, and you know, people have been a skeptic, and I've been one of the skeptics. What the heck is a Roman coin doing down here? So, continue on.
Yeah, one of the little-known factoids in southern Utah, the county seat of Iron County is Parowan. If you go back and look at in the Parowan city history, when they built the courthouse, they were digging the flag post to put the big flagpole in, and as it came out, what is this? A number of Roman coins were unearthed there in that, digging out the foundation for the flagpole. It's well documented. That one is, there's actually in the Iron County.
Heard of that.
Yeah, there was actually pictures of it in the museum for the years and years, but who knows if that's still around now. But so Parowan had that history in the flagpole story. Then over the mountain, about the middle of Utah, there's Richfield area, and there's a little town called Salina. Salina means salty. The soil is kind of alkaline, salty looking, but there's a reason why it's called that. The first ranchers that came down there uncovered an ancient salt mine. It is now today called Redmond Salt. It was
already being mined.
It's already being mined anciently. This is a huge salt deposit that branches off into multiple areas. It's a major mine down there. I was just telling you before we started taping, you go down there and they'll give you a tour. At least they used to, maybe not now with safety issues. But yeah, it's like a big coal mine. It's a salt mine though. And they have different levels of purity. They have like the 14 karat gold vein, gold salt. It was really pure salt. They had it analyzed and assayed. That's where they make their table salt, you know, and things. It's a major thing. I worked with one of the largest cattle ranchers in southern Utah at the time, Jerry Woodland and Cattle. His father, Cleo, when I was going to school there at Southern Utah University, I rode with them. I helped, you know, be a cowboy with them a little bit. I did a lot of accounting work for him and financial planning for the family, okay? And every, once a year in the spring, April, maybe into February, March, Jerry would load up his bobtail truck and go up there and just literally take tons of the rock salt, these big, you know, like rocks. They would come out of the mine, and he would take it up on the mountain as salt licks for his cattle and the deer and elk. We knew specifically where, you know, each salt lick was, because that was a place to, you know, to go hunt, because it was a magnet for all of the animals locally. So in one of my trips to pick up all the salt, Jerry introduced me, and he showed me where the first mine was. He was like relatives of the Wood family, so they knew each other really well. And one of the untold stories of that mine was when the first ranchers went in and found it, there was this part of that was blocked off, and actually under ancient door. And they broke it down, and inside it was like an armory. There were all this armor, shields, swords, spears. They thought it was jaredite. Being Mormon culture, they thought it was ancient jaredite type of thing, or Nephite. And come to find out, it wasn't that at all. It was Roman. They were Roman armaments, Roman helmets, everything. So there's your connection. I think they were they were looking for the salt. They had found that and were mining them. That was one of their salt mines.
Did you follow up on that, on the proof, the documentation? Is there any? Can someone go somewhere to try and figure that out? Because you know what people are going to say, that's fantasy, that's conspiracy, that's not real,
There was a few things posted in journals, ancient, older journals about it, and into the the early 1900s, there were a lot of museum newsletters talking about that. So it's out there. It's just something. Who knows what happened to all of that? How much there was actually there in armor? But it was not Spanish. Okay, definitely was not Spanish. It was Roman. The broadswords. It was definitely Roman. Ties into those Roman coins found in Parowan. So yeah.
True. Man, you're wealth of knowledge. I appreciate it.
Well, it's just stuff you live and that. But yeah, as you tie in to this tunnel system, you got the story of Johnny Brewer, Johnny Brewer's cave. I interviewed Johnny Brewer many times. There was also another down this is on the Fredonia, Arizona side of the Arizona Strip. He was a sheep herder and found a cave that was full of artifacts too.
Talking about Gordon Smith?
Yeah. You've heard about that?
I'm not supposed to mention that name or what?
No.
Okay.
But he was saying that they were people hanging upside down. They were in armor. They were actually hung upside down for some reason in that. He was going to take us in there by helicopter, but that got shut down. The BLMs, wouldn't allow that to come in for whatever reason. Yeah. So I don't know if that was true or not, but it made sense. Could have been Roman too. Who knows? It wasn't Spanish. He said it was definitely before the Spaniards. So my guess it was Roman too.
You opened up a whole new area that I had no idea about. There's little hints and traces of it here, Roman here and there and throughout the country, but it was pretty sporadic. I'd never heard anything like you're saying, except for the Tucson lead crosses. Those are Roman artifacts, So
yeah. So the question becomes, it's logical. Where did they come from? Where did the Romans? How did they get here? By ship? Or did they, as they conquered the Egyptians, did they know the tunnel system? Did they have the history of the tunnels? I submit they probably did. A lot of things that are mysterious that we just don't know about. I mean, you can't conquer Alexandria, right? Alexandria, Egypt, which was had a huge library of antiquity. And of course, under the Romans, they eventually burned it down, and all this ancient knowledge was lost. I think they were trying to cover their tracks, and Titus and his Roman legions were just burning everything. And of course, Pompeo and all of that. Who knows what happened with Nero? Nero was crazy and destroying a lot of history, a lot of artifacts. But yeah, according to Josephus, that library at Alexandria was one of the major. It had incredible wisdom and knowledge there of the ancient ones. So who knows?
So back to your giant that you found, did you ever try to uncover what happened to him? Did you ever try to find any write-ups, documentations on it? Did you ever?
Well, I was a high school kid. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Later on in life, you never tried to figure out?
I've asked questions around. That's why I started to freelance and go looking for more stuff, right, in that area, because that's target-rich environment. And then, of course, the Antiquities Act came in, and you can't really do any more. They really started patrolling that really well. So it just keep the lid on it. So it's type of what's happened. And no, I found a couple of other things that, An ancient piece of pottery that was definitely a 1st century BC in there, dating to the Romans. I found that myself, yeah.
Wow.
In a side canyon there right off of Parowan. My son was actually, there was all these basalt lava flow, and there was all these markings, and some of them looked like Roman numerals, Roman writings. And my son Nathan, I thought he was after a snake or something, because he went shimmying down this little hole in the basalt, and he comes up with this ancient pot, and it's completely full, and it was like nothing Indian. Okay, it was definitely. It was just an ancient clay. It was empty.
Oh.
And
it's whole. Oh.
Yeah, whole. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I took it to Hugh Nibley, and Nibley looks it over, and he, where'd you get this? And I told him, Southern Utah, little town of Summit. And he takes and he punches some buttons. I thought he was going to turn me into the police or something. He comes, one of his professors of archaeology comes in, he sees it and holds it. He says, yeah, definitely named it off, this specific type of pottery. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? I didn't know the technical terms of it. And so the professor brought in, the BYU had done excavations in the Holy Land. And at that time, that they were taking, they could date the artifacts based on the potteries like this, the rings of a tree. You can tell exactly what it is. And so he dated that Roman 1st century.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. It was made by the Romans 1st century. It was Middle Eastern. Yeah. That's my little addition to the thing. That thing is BYU. I gave it to BYU. Who knows what they did with it after that? I know Nibley it was a very valuable piece, but he didn't believe it came from Southern Utah. I did a sworn affidavit where I found it, and I don't think they even believed me.
Oh. Yeah, if it doesn't fit the narrative, and there is a lot of fraud, so you can see they're being skeptic,
Yeah.
But we're losing a lot of it. All the true history, man.
Back in 2014, I was invited to go back to. There's a group of Christian archaeologists there, and so I was invited to come back and be on a dig. And they were doing a Jericho dig. And then also there was another dig going off in the ancient city of Samaria, and this is Palestinian territory now. So they went down on the strata coming down in the ancient city of Samaria, and during the Roman era, from 1st century AD to the time of Constantinople and Constantine in 600 AD, right? All that area of this was Roman occupation. We see the Roman coins. We see before that, we see the Medes and Persians and the coins and the pottery. So all this is broken. But these are all pottery fragments and shards. But during that Roman era, sure enough, you put the pottery shards together and you see the same exact pot I got whole.
Really?
Yeah. Same type of. The pottery tells a story of how they did it, right? So I'm sitting here, okay, I just happened to find this intact in Southern Utah. Yeah.
True, man.
Yeah. It wasn't me, it was my son. He was only like 9 or 10 at the time, and all I saw was little feet in this crevice of the rocks coming down. I thought, what did you do? I thought he was after a king snake or something. He wanted to catch a snake, and I thought, uh-oh. But he says, Dad, there's something down here, and he pulls it out. It was in there, but it was filled with sand and debris, but it was completely intact.
Huh. So you have a radio station or a radio show. I don't really know anything about it. How do people hear your radio show, and what's it about?
Been doing to kind of tell the story
This type of stuff.
Yeah, this type of stuff is called The Story Behind the Story. It started out at KSUB Radio. My friend Warren Anderson actually began the broadcast with Steve Miner at KSUB. It was on Thursdays. And we would delve into the unexplained, we actually did some interviews with the owners of Skinwalker Ranch in Vernal. That's a bizarre story. A lot of that stuff that's not in the book is even more bizarre.
Wow.
That's there. But things that go bump in the night, things that are unexplained, that's kind of what our genre was to focus on, from Area 51, Rachel, Nevada, and all this other. What the government is not telling you is massive, massive amounts, and part of what it goes back to that giant skeleton that who knows what happened to it.
That's what got you started.
Yeah, it's like
stuff in the first place.
I've hardly been able to given a care in the world, but I know for a fact that they kept it and hidden, and I thought it should be public knowledge in some big museum somewhere.
Yeah.
If I find a Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton, maybe it would. Maybe they would, be super valuable. I don't know. But it's just wrong to me that this hidden and not honestly told. Okay. And so our project in Crow Creek is very much a part of an extension of my research with all that. So just to let you know.
Cool.
Finding out E.W. Hathenbrook's role, and this was the property that Hathenbrook carved out of the reservation land, and it took a major.
So are you willing to tell that story or not? Can you tell that story?
Yeah.
Tell that story?
Yeah.
So I want to break it off and start a new one then.
Okay.
So with that said, true man, I thank you for that story, and that's a wrap.